starting a series of videos looking at my favourite army, the Space Marines, and the various options that you can take when you're choosing out your army list. Today we're going to start with HQ choices, or the leaders. So here you have figures of several of the options that you've got for HQ choices, painted out in the colour scheme of my Space Marine chapter, the Storm Wolves, which you might have seen a bit in our campaigns. So here you've got several chapter masters, some captains, some librarians, danger, some chaplains, some masters of the forge, and just an apothecary option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the type of units that I like to choose from and why I'd like to choose them. And I've also got here to help me talk you through a little bit the Space Marines Codex. Now, there's a particular page I want to bring your attention to before we start, and that's the Chapter Tactics one. In the most recent Codex, probably this is the first place to really think about it. If you're using an off-the-shelf chapter, this doesn't matter too much, because if you've painted like Ultramarines, you've got to use Ultramarine Tactics. But generally it's kind of useful to just go through them. If you've got your own chapter, like mine, basically you can pick and choose according to which one suits you the most. And these chapter tactics are basically a set of special rules that you can use. And they help to make your whole army a bit more efficient and can fight in a battle a little bit differently. And to my surprise, when me and Cameron have basically faced each other as Space Marines, you think, well, Space Marine versus Space Marine, this is going to be different. It isn't really going to be that different. It's going to get a bit boring. But just by using different chapter tactics, it actually changes the game quite a lot. The Ultramarines chapter tactics, basically they've got a set of about 3 rules, but they can only use a rule. They have to use a different rule of turn, which means that the Ultramarines can be quite flexible if you've got the right army. I can't really talk too much about White Scars. I don't really. These tend to be more to do with bikes. Although I have got a bike squad, my experience with bikes is they just die like dogs. So I've never really wanted to build an army around it. The Imperial Fists are quite a good one. They basically help to make your bolter guns that much more efficient, and the bolter gun obviously is pretty much the mainstay of the Space Marine army. It's the rifle that most units carry. Black Templars, I haven't actually ever felt like using them, and some of that this rule about accept no challenge no matter the odds, kind of, I don't really like it that much. It actually feels like a weakness. This, though, not only does it fit the history of my chapter, but it really fits really nicely with the guy I use as a chapter master at the minute, which is this guy. And he's basically been through the wars. He's barely alive. The guy's basically bolted into his armour as a life support system. And he basically led a group, basically a chapter of Space Marines that got trapped in the warp, and they took about 150 years to get out. And by the time they left, about 150 went in, but only about 30 came out. And the ones that were left are true survivors. So this chapter tactics, which basically gives the feel no pain of basically roll on a 6. So if one of your men does get taken down, in most circumstances you get on a 6 he manages to save, so that kind of manages to keep down your attrition. And your vehicles also get it will not die. And that's kind of really handy. The big thing about the Pit Feel No Pain roll is I'm terrible at remembering to roll that save, but it is, even on a 6, it saved a lot of, which is pretty much like orc armor sadly gives you a 6. So it's easy to be dismissive of it, but when you're throwing up armour saves, it gives you that extra lifeline. Salamanders are really interesting, and salamanders are actually really interesting when you not just combine these rules, but also take the chapter master Vulcan Heston, I think it's, or is it Heston Vulcan? I should have his page highlighted somewhere. Let's go and look. Pedro Cantor, Lysander, Vulcan Heston. Their special rule allows you to basically re-roll hits from flamers, because they're very good with flamers. They also manage to re-roll saves against flamers. He also gives you an ability to re-roll misses from multi-melters, which, well, any kind of melter weapon, which when combined together really means if you spam flamers and melters, it means that your army is going to be a lot more efficient at firing these weapons. And Cameron's used this special rule against me, and it pretty slaughtered me, to be fair. It's one of our sample games that we were doing when I was trying out an army list for a tournament, and I was quite alarmed at just how well he did with this. And finally, there's Raven Guard, which I don't know. Strike from the shadows. I don't really like Raven Guard, so I don't really look at that too much. To me, the really big ones that stick out are the Ultramarines ones, because they're flexible, probably a bit like the Ultramarines, but I have to say, my opinion of the Codex in general is there's a hell of a lot of talk about the Ultramarines. They do get a bit boring. They're called sometimes the Glory Boys of the Space Marines. I find the Salamanders are really quite an interesting chapter, and it's just a shame that there's not more information on them. But yeah, this allows you to almost change tactics each round and kind of play to your strengths according to how that you've set up on that round. I really like the Iron Hands rule. It's the one I use the most. It not only does it fit the backstory, but that it kind of just helps to make the Space Marines a little bit more resilient. And I do tend to, as far as tactics go, try and be more resilient than I do aggressive. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. And then there's the Imperial Fists, basically allow you to basically improve your ability to shoot. It allows you to re-roll any rolls of 1 if you miss with a bolt pistol, bolt gun, stone bolt, a heavy bolter, or any combat weapon that is using a bolt gun. So that's kind of useful because it allows you to kind of... Space Marines hit on a 3 and up, and it kind of really improves your odds at hitting things, which is a good thing, which is an absolutely good thing. Salamander's great if you've got flamers, and again, if you use their chapter master, it makes your melter that much more effective. Also, as I should have mentioned, you also get to benefit from a master crafted weapon in your HQ, which again is useful. So at this point, it's useful to just talk a little bit about Space Marines. Space Marines themselves are a very good all-round kind of army. They don't really excel at any one thing, but they're good at everything. They have pretty much the best armor save. They are pretty good at close combat. They're pretty good at shooting. There are armies out there that are better at shooting. There are armies out there that are better at close combat. But generally, they can do everything. I find the trick with Space Marines is to kind of work out the army that you're facing and be their weakness. So if you're coming up against orcs are rubbish at shooting, but at close combat they are almost a stat match for Space Marines. In fact, they have even more attacks than them. What they don't have is armour, so that they do tend to go down a lot. But they're so much cheaper that basically it's not unusual for each Space Marine to be faced with 3 orcs. And each orc itself has typically double the attacks of any Space Marine. So three times the number of guys in a unit and double the attacks. That's like 6 times more hand-to-hand combat. You will kind of want to avoid hand-to-hand combat with our orcs, really, if you can. So really, against a unit like the orcs, who are very good at close combat, you want to shoot them, yeah? Against a unit like Tau, who are very good at shooting, you want to engage them in close combat if you can, because pretty much you will tear them to pieces. So it really is a case of working out, I'm good at this. Well, I'm alright at this. What is my enemy weak at? And then try and be that thing against them. So, thinking about that, I've lost one of mine. When you put an army together, you should pretty much start with an HQ. So, think about what you want the whole army to do, and then start building that from the HQ. Now, these are chapter masters and these are captains. There's about 40 points difference between them. Generally, chapter masters, they've got an extra wound, so they're a little bit more tougher. And they also can call in this, for one turn only, they can call in an orbital bombardment, which can be quite nice as well. But both these, if you add them to a unit, they tend to be very good at close combat. So if you're expecting to come up against something and be in close combat with a unit, it's very good to have one of these units. These have 4, chapter masters have 4 hit points. Captains have 3, so they're pretty tough. Of course, you can get insta kill with them by using a rocket launcher or anything strength 8 and above, but generally they're hard to kill. They also benefit from a 4 and up invulnerable save, so even against a las cannon, there's a 50-50 chance of them surviving, which is nice. If you don't really think that you necessarily need to be grunty and hard in close combat, you might want to try and be a bit more sneaky with your army through use of these. These are librarians, and they're the psychic forces of the Space Marines. They do not have an invulnerable save, and they only have 2 wounds, and being psychers, it's quite likely that they will bleed a few wounds to a few bad rolls. But I mean, particularly with psychic rules being more to the forefront of the more recent edition, it's really worth having one to see what you can do with them. Amongst other things, to have an anti-psyker ability against your enemy as well. A basic psyker is 60 points, and I think for another either 20, I think it's 25 points, you can be a level 2 psyker. That affects the number of cards, psychic power cards you can draw, which can really kind of beef things up. The difficulty is, though, of course, that when you're using psychic powers, I can't remember if this is the new set or the old set. It must be the new set. You draw a card at random, so you've kind of planned out your whole army, and you pull a card at random, yeah, and you've got warp speed. And now at the beginning of the game, you've got to kind of work out how you're going to use this effectively to really do anything. It can be, sometimes I've pulled cards out and I've gone, well, I've not a clue how I'm going to use that. The next category of HQ isn't really a favourite of mine. In fact, I've never actually used them. These are chaplains. These are kind of like the high priests of the Space Marines. They help to make the units they're attached to more fearless, and basically they can lead them, and they can basically enhance the unit that they're part of. But They've only got 2 hit points, which is 1 less than the captain. Although they do, like the captain, have an invulnerable save of 4 and up. But I tend to be honest, I tend to prefer to just have a captain. Now the difference really is that a chaplain kind of boosts the morale and the fighting ability of any unit that he's attached to, whereas a captain is just a tough guy by himself. I should really use one and try him out, but no, there's no real excuse. I ought to make that my mission. Next game, I need to field one of these guys. Okay. I don't know why, but for some reason, both of mine have got plasma guns as well. I kind of picked these up randomly because I just kind of picked them up as part of a set, and you go through and go, oh, I've got a chaplain in here. And it's like, okay, but never actually used them. These guys, though, a bit of a favourite of mine. These are Masters of the Forge, and these are basically like tech marines. Now, the reason you'd want to have these on is they've got a few slick tricks up their sleeves. Mainly, it's the fact that they allow you to repair vehicles. I found that a bit hit and miss, because if people know you've got a Master of the Forge, what they tend to do is they tend to concentrate fire on your vehicles until they're gone. They are completely gone. I've also found that since the new CODEX and me taking the Iron Hands rolls that allow me to get basically all my vehicles have it will not die and recover a hull point on a 5 or a 6. They're not quite so effective. They are useful if you're taking a massive mech army to basically help to support the army and when some of the vehicles break down, to try and repair them. What I found, though, it's very difficult to actually get in place to your vehicles and actually repair them, and it usually burns up two turns just to get close enough to try and repair it, and usually by that time somebody's decided to just concentrate the fire and vaporize it. So I've tried things like putting them in rhinos, and it's not been particularly effective. Another thing that they can do, which is handy, is that they can boost the cover save of a building in your area. So if you have to basically defend a point, and you have one of these guys, it means that you can. It's that much easier to defend a point because you boost up your 4 and up cover save to a 3 and up cover save, and because if I'm trying to defend an area, even as Space Marines, I try and use cover save, because there's always somebody with a las cannon that's with a high AP trying to take you down, and I don't like that. Finally, what they can do, which I've used before, because I absolutely adore dreadnoughts, is you can basically take dreadnoughts not just as elites but as heavies as well, and that's allowed me before to take basically 5 dreadnoughts, which can be fun, which can be very, very fun. You got 5 walking tanks. I do own 5 dreadnoughts. I was hoping at some point to use them a bit like a Space Marine squad, but a dreadnought squad in an apocalypse game, because there's about 500 odd points there, and about 15 hull points there as well. So yeah, in theory they should be able to take down something big like a super heavy tank. We'll see. One of the options you can take is several command squads, including the Apoco 3. And what this guy does is give you Feel No Pain, which can be handy to a unit. He's not a HQ choice in himself, but you can basically supplement him and a couple of guys to a unit, and it makes that unit a little bit more tougher. I've never really, although I had a lot of fun, as you can tell, making this model from various bits that I had left over. Now, it never really kind of, on close up it looks a bit weird because it's just, he's basically in surgical white and then I've splattered with blood everywhere, and it just kind of looks like a cross between bad painting and just something a bit disturbing. I kind of like it though. It was definitely fun. Definitely fun. Yeah, that is what gives Phil no pain. Ouch. So that, in a nutshell, is your HQ units. So depending really on what you want to do, is which one you should really take. If you want, like I say, if you want your units to have basically a hero that can give and accept challenges and pretty tough in close combat, you might want a captain or chapter master. If you want to do some shenanigans, psychic shenanigans, and hope that you get a decent card and psychic powers, a librarian can be really quite handy. A chaplain helps to enhance the overall effectiveness of the unit he's attached to, particularly if they're a close combat one. The Master of the Forge really allows you to save some of those vehicles and basically get them back into the fray. And that allows you this guy allows you to cut down the amount of injuries that you're having. Now, you might have noticed amongst these guys, a few figures that you recognise. Let's put this up. So this guy is Marius Calgar. He's the leader of the Ultramarines, but it's just such a cool figure, and I did want to paint him up for my unit. And on last Codex, I was just kind of using him occasionally as a character. Now in the current Codex, he is 275 points. It's ouch. That's a lot of points, but he is kind of worth it. One of his special abilities is that he's able to choose whether he passes or fail any morale test, and this is for his entire unit. So that's really, and he's got it. So that's really useful because it allows you to go, nah, I choose not to fail this initiative, even though it's this morale roll, even though it's like minus 11. That's really quite handy. He's got a lot of attack, double power fists, weird things, mastercrafted. He's pretty badass. Pretty badass. This guy is Pedro Cantor, who is, I think, the Crimson Fist, but again painted in my chapter colours. He has a pretty awesome storm bolter of some sort. If I can just, yeah, and it can fire quite a lot of shots. And he's basically a great guy to have if you're coming up against people and you want to really just kind of shoot the hell out of them. A lot of these named characters can be quite expensive, but they have these special rules that really kind of change the way you play the game. Yeah, they can be extra aggressive. They can be a bit tougher than normal. Calgar's ability to choose whether he passes or fails just really kind of changes the game. He's like if you haven't got a very shooty army, you probably want a Pedro Cantor because he gives more shooty to your shootiness. Yeah, if that made sense. But what I've really enjoyed about the latest Codex is now you don't just need to have named characters. Is the fact that there are a series of relics at the back that you can buy for your HQ choice. And let's find it here. Oh, where have you put it, Michael? Keep keep going backwards. Salamanders. Like I say, why wasn't there more salamanders in there? They're awesome. I really love the back history. Here we go, the chapter relics. And these allow you basically to take just a standard chapter master and put them more on a footing with Pedro Cantor and Marius Cavagar. So these are rare items, and you can choose one for your army. The Burning Blade is basically a power weapon, but it increases your strength, and it's got nice AP, and basically can burn through a lot of things. The armour Indomitus is like a master crafted piece of armour that gives you two and up save, but also an invulnerable save. Which can be quite useful, but then considering that if you've got a captain, for instance, you'll already have that 4 and up covers, 4 and up save, invulnerable save from your Iron Halo. This is a big favourite of mine though, the Shield Eternal. It not only gives you the ability to have Eternal Warrior, gives you Iron Adamantium Will and Eternal Warrior. And also it gives you a 3 and up invulnerable cover save. So I use it with this guy. This is my chapter master that I use in most games, and it just helps make him that little bit tougher, and he really kind of can then hold it, because we basically did about 2 years ago actually now, a Civil War game, because this was my original chapter master and he was an up-and-coming captain, and basically the two of them had a civil war basically, and we split my army 2 ways and had a battle. This guy lost, and since in the backstory of my chapter, half my chapter is basically exiled from the other half is hunting it down. So in actual fact, he's in charge of half of it, and he's in charge of another half. But I found that he was actually more interesting than the original leader, and so most of my games now revolve around him, and I've used him in tournaments as well. And it's really nice to basically be able to just take a vanilla chapter master and make him a bit unique to you. Primarch's Wrath puts you on a par with this guy. It basically increases it's a very good storm bolter that really kind of cuts through a lot of people, gets a lot of shots off. Teeth of Terror. It's a chainsword. It's almost like a power weapon chainsword. It is pretty good though. And then the Emperor Ascendant. I don't really know. I keep reading about this and I keep forgetting what it does, but I don't tend to. I'm not that impressed by that. That is the one that's the one I like to use him. Maybe I ought to potentially use the Primarch's Wrath once in a while for this guy. But yeah, it's going through working out not just what your HQ has, but ways to kind of enhance them through these kind of relics and things that you can buy on for the HQ is quite useful. But it is nice, yeah. To me, the Shield Eternal and the Primarch's Wrath are the two relics that really appeal to me, to make it a kind of cut price chapter master myself. Yeah, which is good. So I hope you enjoyed that. Next, we'll be looking at some of the troop choices. There's all of 2 actually that you can have for the Space Marines. Stay tuned, do subscribe, and we'll catch you later. Bye.